Hello, I'm Eric Buck with Remax Properties of the Summit in Breckenridge, Colorado. This tutorial is on what I call parts of the whole. It's working with percentages. I'm not going to give you quick and easy formulas that you will be expected to memorize, but instead I'm going to take the time to make sure that you understand not only what you're doing, but why you're doing it in each of these problems. Let's look at some of the times that parts of the whole questions may come. We get them often when we're looking at commissions and sales prices, when we're determining the value of income properties, calculating taxes or property values from the level of taxes, and appreciation and depreciation type questions. And there are more examples as well. In a parts of the whole question, you'll be given or have to calculate the part and the percentage. Your goal is to determine the whole. Remember, part divided by the percentage equals the whole. Again, part divided by the percentage equals the whole. And finally, part divided by the percentage equals the whole. That's the main equation you need to remember. So let's start out by converting percentages to decimals. So 1% is 1/100th. Think of a penny being 1/100th of a dollar. 1% is 1 divided by 100, or 0.01. 10% would be 0.10. 75%, 0.75. 100% is 1. And 150% is 1.5. So let's look at our first example. Sally's listing agreement states she will pay a 6% commission to ABC Brokerage on the sale of her home. The closing statement shows a debit of $9,000 to Sally for commissions. What was the sales price of the home? Well, the part is the $9,000. That's the commissions. The percentage is 6%. That was the commission rate. So how do we get the whole? We divide the part by the percentage. 9,000 divided by 0.06 is $150,000. So the selling price of the home was $150,000. We can check that math by taking $150,000 and multiplying it by 0.06, and we come back with our $9,000. Let's go to question number 2. Selling salesperson Ralph received an $11,550 check for bringing the buyer for Judy's home. The listing broker split the total commission of 7% between the listing and selling brokerages evenly, and Ralph's broker paid him a 60% split. What was the selling price of the home? Well, this is going to be a multi-step problem. But first, let's make sure we understand how commissions are dispersed. We have the seller pays commission to the listing brokerage. Listing brokerage keeps part of that and gives part to the selling brokerage. And each of the respective brokerages split between themselves and their agents. So, for example, 100% goes from the seller to the listing brokerage. They may split 50-50 between the listing brokerage and the selling. The listing brokerage may give their agent 60% and keep 40%. And the selling brokerage may have a more seasoned agent, and they're paying him 70% split and keeping only 30% for themselves. Put some hard numbers to this. We got a $250,000 home with a 6% commission, so the total commission is $15,000. Split that 50-50 between the two. That's $7,500 for each of the brokerages. And then we split those dollars between the two agents. And we have the listing agent getting $4,500, the selling agent getting $5,250. So let's go back to our question. We see that Ralph received $11,550, and we know that's 60% of what the selling brokerage got as a whole. So what did the selling brokerage get? Well, 11,550 divided by 0.6 is $19,250. So that's what the selling brokerage got. Well, what was their split? Well, they got 50% of the total commission paid. So $19,250 was half the total commission. We divide it by 0.5, and we get $38,500 was the total commission paid by the seller to the listing brokerage. Now, that's 7% of the total sales price. So our third step, $38,500 divided by 0.07 gives us $550,000 as the price of the home. Example 3, an office building generates net income of $102,000 per year. If the purchaser wants a 12% return, what is he willing to pay for the building? Well, $102,000 is our part, 12% is our percentage, divide the part by the percentage, and we get the building is worth $850,000. We can check again, take $850,000 times the 12% return, and that gives us $102,000. Income properties, another example. A 14-unit apartment building rents each apartment for $900 per month. The complex averages a 10% vacancy rate, and expenses are 30% of collected rents. If an investor wants an 8% capitalization rate, what will he pay for the building? Well, first we got to figure out what the part is. That is, what's the income of the building. So the income is 14 units times $900, but we have a 10% vacancy rate, so we're only collecting 90% of that, so it's times 0.9, and that's the monthly, so we multiply it by 12 to get an annual revenue of $136,080. We have expenses, which we said were 30% of collected rents, so that's $40,824, which we subtract from the $136,080, and we have net income of $95,256. That's our part. Our percentage is 8. Divide our part by 0.08, and we get a value in the building of $1,190,700. One thing to keep in mind is that the price and capitalization rate are inversely proportional. What does that mean? Well, it means as one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa. Price will decline as the cap rate rises. For example, if we have income of $50,000 and our cap rate is 8%, we divide our $50,000 by 0.08 to get $625,000. If we take that same income of $50,000 and our cap rate is 12%, $50,000 divided by 0.12 is equal to only $416,667. So you may get a question about what happens to the price when the cap rate goes up or down. Down here we have an example of it declining. Income of 80, price of 1,000, cap rate is equal to 0.08. If we have income of 80 and the price goes up, then we have a cap rate of only 0.0667. So example 5, let's look at a tax question. Susan pays $5,000 per year in property taxes. Her tax rate is 40 mils. What is the assessed value of her home? Well, the part we know is $5,000. That's what she pays per year in property taxes. The percent, well, that's the mill rate, the tax rate. So it's $40 per $1,000. So 40 divided by 1,000 is 0.04. That's our percentage. The whole is 5,000 divided by 0.04, or $125,000. We could also look at this in an alternative way. We have $5,000 that she pays. She's paying $40 per 1,000, so divide 40 into 5,000. We get 125 of those 40s. So we have 125 thousands that she's paying. That's 125,000. Okay, let's go to a more complicated version of the text question. Rebecca's monthly mortgage payment includes $1,500 for taxes. Homes in her neighborhood are assessed at 80% of market value and have a 90% equalization factor. The mill levy is 5 mills. What is the market value of her home? Well, before we go on with this one, let's make sure we understand what an equalization factor is. Not all counties may assess their properties in a similar manner. So we may have high assessments in some and low in others. the state will apply an equalization factor to try to even out all of the assessments. So if we have a 90% equalization factor in Rebecca's neighborhood, let's say her house is worth $100,000, it's only going to be assessed at 80% of that, which would be $80,000, and then with the 90% equalization factor, it actually would only be $72,000. So let's go and look at this question. Well, we start with what's the part? Well, we have $1,500 in taxes, but it's 12 months of $1,500, so make sure we annualize that when we're doing our calculation. It's $18,000. Our mill rate is 5 per thousand. 5 divided by 1,000 is 0.005. So our whole adjusted assessment, this is for the after the equalization factor, is 18,000 divided by 0.005, or $360,000. But remember, we had an equalization here, so that number is 90% of what the local assessment was. So 360 divided by 0.9 is 400,000. And the assessment's only 80% of market value. So the whole market value is 400,000 divided by 0.8 equals $500,000. Example 7, appreciation. Mo bought his home in 2010 with a $300,000 mortgage and a $1,600 monthly mortgage payment. In 2018, he sold his home with a 25% gain for $1,093,750. Inflation was 2.5% per year between 2010 and 2018. What did he pay for his home? There's a little bit of trickery in this question, and we'll get to that at the end, but let's try to solve it. What's the part? Well, the part in this case is going to be what he sold his home for, the $1,093,750. What percentage is that? Well, it's going to be everything he paid for the home plus a 25% gain. So his percentage is 125%. If we divide the whole 1,093,750 by 1.25, we find out he paid $875,000 for his home. What was the trick here? Well, the inflation rate and the mortgage payment were totally not relevant. That's just thrown in there to try to trick you. Here's another appreciation question. Curly bought his home in 2010. In 2012, he built a $50,000 addition on the home. In 2018, he sold his home with a 30% gain over his cost basis, and he sold it for $975,000. What did he pay for his home in 2010? Well, again, this is a case where the bigger number is actually the part. $975,000 is the part. What part is it? It's all of what he paid for the home plus 30% gain. So it's 130%. So his part, 975, divided by the percentage, 1.3, is $750,000. But that's not our answer, because remember, he built an addition on the home. So that addition added $50,000 to his cost basis. We have to subtract that to get to his original cost. Here's another depreciation example. Larry's home is currently valued at $191,250. It has depreciated 3% per year over the last 5 years from when he bought it. What was the original purchase price? Okay, so here we have the part is $191,250. What's the percentage? Well, if it depreciates 3% for each year for 5 years, that means it depreciated 15%. So now it's only worth 85% of what he originally purchased it for. So our part's $191,250 divided by 85% equals $225,000. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at tutorials@ownthesummit.com and let me know what you think and if you have any additional questions that you think should be added to this tutorial.